Well, thanks very much for joining us on the South African Morning. So I wanted to find out firstly, what's the link between poverty and forest degradation?
I think in terms of in terms of sort of the objective where we're coming from with this report is that really wanted to examine how forests and trees can sort of support global efforts in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal on ending poverty. And so, we see that globally at the moment, you have 1 out of 10 people who live in extreme poverty, and almost 2/3 of the world population living on less than $10 a day. But then at the same time, you have more than 1 billion forest-reliant people around the world who derive direct and indirect benefits from forests. And so, these benefits include forest-related employment, income, the use of timber, non-timber forest products, as well as a range of different ecosystem services. And so, as these services are being weighted away through either deforestation or the degradation of forests, the benefits that the poor can derive and support their livelihoods are, of course, also impacted by this.
So does your report also make recommendations for how forests should be better managed to try and make sure that these benefits reach the people who need them most?
Yeah, I think, the messages that we have sort of coming out of this, I would say we have 2 sort of key messages that we want to get across. The first is that forests and trees really support human well-being and contribute to the global efforts of ending poverty. So you have, like I said, almost 1/4 of the global population who live really close to the forest and often rely really directly on the goods and services that forests and trees provide, especially in tropical regions where, forests contribute up to 25% of rural household income. But because of the ability of forests and trees to also deliver these goods and services, across seasons and across years, they also play a crucial role in sort of managing risk and acting as a form of insurance. So this is obviously really important to consider now, especially as COVID-19 is also expected to push an additional 71 million people into extreme poverty.
So I wanted to ask about COVID-19 next. You say also that the report points to a vicious cycle of forest destruction, disease and poverty. So amid COVID-19, how have you identified disease as one of those key factors playing into this vicious cycle?
Yeah, I think that especially when it comes to COVID-19, you see that as people are as forests are being destructed more and more, either through the overexploitation of those resources, and you of course have a link there with poverty too, especially with COVID. Sort of, you see a lot of people migrating back to rural areas because of both unemployment in cities as well as the risk of contagion in the cities, which is leading to, in some instances, increased pressure on forests. And as the forests disappear, you also have sort of when the interface between people and the forest becomes sort of stronger and stronger, you have an increased risk of zoonotic diseases as well.
There's also a very fine balance that has to be maintained between economic upliftment and conservation and climate change. How do we get that balance right? Because it seems that globally we're very far from it at the moment.
Yeah, I think, that's one of the points that I wanted to raise is really that, for a lot of people, I think we tend to think of forests and trees primarily from an environmental perspective. And so, you either see it about destroying or protecting forests. But I think what our report really shows is that forests and trees play a really big role in supporting people's livelihoods. And so in order to leverage those synergies between forests and poverty alleviation, this really needs to influence the way in which we manage our forest and tree resources.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Markus Ihalainen speaking to us from Dakar. He is one of the senior researchers from the Center for International Forestry.